cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our spoiler discussion reaction review of episode 5 of Moon Knight called The Asylum. This is not your daddy's MCU.
Well,
we knew that. I mean, we knew that going in. But,
right. Yep.
Oscar Isaac, everybody.
Yeah.
That man can cry on command. And
then speak with a British accent, and then have a broken nose, and then lose his mind, and then
him smacking himself was just like. I have liked a lot of the performances that we've gotten within the MCU, specifically Robert Downey Jr. in Endgame. I also liked Chris Evans a lot in what he was able to bring to Cap, and then what Elizabeth Olsen did for Wanda. And there's been some really, I think, top-notch performances going on inside the MCU that people just don't want to look at because they're comic book movies.
Right.
And which is, again, one of the things I have a problem with within the Academy Award system is that if it made more than $5, nobody wants to care about it.
Right.
Or it's a big franchise, they don't want to care about it.
Right.
This is the best performance I've seen. For right now, this is the best performance I've seen. As Oscar Isaac, as Mark, as Steven. We'll see what happens when Jake shows up.
If Jake shows up?
If Jake shows up, yeah. So what do you think of this episode overall?
It was crazy. It was, the first couple episodes were fun. We talked about it the last episode last week, how this was a adventure of the week, Indiana Jones, The Mummy, and this was like, here, let me literally rip your heart out and show it to you for both Mark and Steven and the rest of us. I mean, I knew it was going to potentially get dark because something had to have happened in his past to have, brought out the DID situation, but wow, right. I wanted to reach through the TV and punch his mother in the freaking mouth.
Yes.
Over and over again.
The idea of doing an origin story of a character inside a 6-episode series is not new to the MCU. They've done it before. And it was. I know they've done it before. It wasn't Loki, and it wasn't Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it was kind of WandaVision. They kind of did that, like.
Yeah, we knew. Yeah,
how she was gonna be and stuff.
Well, but we knew her origin. We knew of her origin.
Right.
We didn't really get into the meat of what actually happened until the
And they did it kind of here too. Like, we know that Mark gave his soul over to Khonshu. Like, we know that going in. That's the basis of the show. And so that was what we were going in.
And there are multiple personalities.
Yes.
We knew that too.
So going back and telling that story of his brother dying and him feeling somewhat responsible, but his mom specifically feeling that he was responsible for it. And I'm going to try to word this the best way I can. I get her reaction to utter depression that she went through. She could not separate the depression she felt for loss of one son and trying to be there for the other son. And that's hard for anyone. But that other son needs mom just as much as mom needs the second son and the father and husband.
Yeah.
And she is the worst villain in the entire MCU. Maybe not. But
I mean, I think so. But I get what you're saying on
Yeah.
the surface.
On the yeah,
I
yeah.
understand. I understand, but I do not understand a mother not loving her child. I
Right.
just don't get that
Right.
at all.
Right. It's yeah. I don't know
I,
how.
my kids could do horrible, horrible things. I would still love them. I'm not going to maybe agree with it and, I feel
Might
like
call the police on them.
I feel like a failure, myself for allowing that situation to happen, but I would still love them.
See.
This is a rabbit hole that we just don't want to go
Right,
down.
right. But Mark's way of handling that was creating Steven.
Right.
And come to find out, they were on the ship to find out if their hearts were in balance with the feather, to find out if they are actually worthy to go into Egyptian heaven and not be sucked down into Egyptian hell.
Right. Right.
Sucked down by the souls. And so Mark and Steven having to go through the stuff that Mark did for Khonshu and all the dead bodies and all the lost souls because of that, because Khonshu wanted him to to be his vengeance,
Right.
in the mortal form.
Right.
I love that process. I love Steven and Mark working their way through everything that Steven did, or that Mark did, until it came to Mom. And Mark did everything he could to keep Steven safe from that process.
Right.
Because he created Steven to have
An escape.
yeah. Good memories of Mom, good
Right.
memories of whatever. And he created Steven with the British accent when he was like 9, to do that and to have something good in his life that's not hanging over him every 5 seconds of every day.
Right.
When he was at home, and him running away as a teenager, like, and his dad trying to, like, we'll get her help. Like, it's just gonna sound weird. I love that. I love that that's the way they explained this this process of him being DID.
Right.
And it's based in a lot of things that have happened in the real world. Trauma as a child creates some version of DID for most people who have it. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying that I'm an expert on this subject, but from things that I've read and seen and heard and stuff like that, it's trauma based. Everything's trauma based. So they showed the trauma, and I want to say didn't pull any punches, but they didn't physically show her beating Mark, because Mark wanted Steven to remember her the way that he remembered her. And I again, I love that idea of keeping Steven safe.
Yeah. But then Steven is the one who ultimately is the voice of, I wouldn't say reason, but calm. I mean, he's a fake persona.
Right.
But he's the one that tells Mark,
it's not your fault.
It's not your fault. You were a child. So that means that deep down somewhere Mark knows that.
Yeah.
Because they're the same person.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't pull it up, pull it to the surface, whatever.
He creates Steven when he's like, what, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that area, whatever. And Mark / Steven now in the show Oscar Isaac is in his mid to late 30s. So if you go 20 years, your imaginary friend has a soul, like, or has base knowledge of stuff when he's Mark, and Mark knows stuff when Steven is Steven. Like, there's something in there, some connective tissue in there. But
right. Well, again, you're gonna have the base, not memories, but the base
Knowledge.
knowledge, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Just, it's in the back of your mind, or, and it's not to the front of your mind. So, ultimately Mark knew that he was a child, like, in his gut, he knew that that was right,
Right.
but he still had all these emotions that just, piled on top of that
Yeah.
knowledge. So having, sometimes you just need someone else to tell you, and it was him that told himself.
Yeah, but that's, I
But
mean,
and it's also just the learning to love yourself
which
for
is what this show is. Like,
yeah.
for me, this show is, yes, he's got DID, and yes, there's multiple personalities in there, and yes, he's got an Egyptian god whispering in his ear too, which I miss Khonshu. I'm just gonna say it. I miss Khonshu. But like we've talked about in previous episode reactions and reviews, is each series is telling some story about a character within the confines of the MCU. Loki was coming Loki was about loving yourself and coming to terms with who you are, and finding out that you are your own person and you're not in the shadow of your brother or your father or your adopted parents or whatever it ends up being. And this is the other version of that. This is finding your place, your purpose, loving yourself because the trauma that happened to you as a child.
Right, because someone else told you that you were a piece of crap your
Right.
entire life.
And I love the memory scene of when they find the archaeologist and it's Layla's dad, and Steven's like, "You did this?" And Mark's like, "No, it was Bushwhacker. I tried to save them, but he turned on me." Because for the entire time Steven's been like, "You're the one who killed him." And even in the last episode when Mark told when Harrow told Layla, or at least manipulated in her into
Right.
saying that it was Mark.
Right.
That kind of thing has been hanging over this entire series. And Mark tried to do the right thing, even though before he was with Khonshu, he was a mercenary.
Right.
And I love that they addressed that. I love that they spent that time to say, Mark is a good guy. Mark is trying to do the right thing, but he also has a certain set of skills
Right. Well, and
that
they
he's sold to the highest bidder.
right, and they address that when he goes into the whatever that was, cafeteria or whatever.
Yeah.
And all the dead people were sitting there, and they were all people that he had killed. And again, Stephen is mortified, like, you killed these people, you remember them? And Mark is like, yeah, I remember them, but they were all bad people, so I was told by Khonshu. Whether or
Right,
not that was
right.
actually true, we don't know. But he was like justifying why he did what he did
Yeah.
to Stephen, not like, I'm just this butcher out there killing people willy-nilly.
Right.
They were bad people, and I was taking care of a situation.
Right. It's still a morally gray area, but I feel more for Mark knowing that he's doing things for Khonshu, even though Khonshu kind of manipulated him into being his avatar.
Right.
But he still is trying to do good. His version of good, though, is Khonshu brings judgment without a trial,
Right.
without predication. I guess there's predication there because the people are bad or whatever.
Yeah,
But
well, he's totally taking Khonshu's word for it that these
Right,
people
right.
are bad, and
Right.
that they've they've done things, bad things or whatever. It kind of also makes you wonder if he thinks of his mom a little bit
yeah,
when he does
Yeah.
this, because he would still hold that, like, hate, anger, whatever, and then she did all these things, bad things to him, and nobody came to his defense. His dad was just like,
Yeah.
she's sick, and
Yeah. That freaking birthday scene hits a little close to home. But yeah, he tried, like, his dad wasn't there for him. And
right.
so
So
he's holding.
nobody was there to protect him or
Yeah.
help him. So now I kind of wonder if that's like, and they may never really touch on it, but you feel like, maybe that's a little bit of his making it okay to
Yeah.
to do,
Yeah.
or his, like, most people, like, I mean, everybody probably knows how to kill somebody. I mean, you pick up a
Right.
gun and you
Right.
point it at somebody and you pull the trigger, you're going to kill somebody. But most people could never bring themselves to actually do
Right.
that. So
Right.
that thing that kind of pushes him over the edge may be his, I'm saving all the little me's out there
Right,
that,
right. And that story idea has been used before with people who've been through trauma who become something to save those
who can't save themselves.
who can't
and,
save
yeah.
themselves. I want to say Pretty Little Lies. No.
A-Team.
Well,
That's like what they say in there. We're, here to
help the little. Well,
Yeah.
Leverage is that way too. But
Leverage,
But
yeah.
I'm thinking of the movie that came out. I think it was 2019, and a woman who had been raped several times as a child becomes a serial killer of predatory men, and I cannot think of the name of it.
Is it the one that was kind of like the
Tell us in the comments, please. Be nice.
one that we went and saw? It wasn't. It wasn't Scarlett Johansson, but it was.
We're all around it.
Yeah.
It's something like Pretty Lies or
Yeah.
something along that line. But I can't.
And it was like the one that Charlize Theron did, except it was a little. There was a different spin on it.
Yes, and
Okay,
but it was
I
very
remember.
much the idea of I'm going to do this evil thing to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else.
Right.
It's a storytelling trope that I like because it's not necessarily a trope. It's a storytelling mechanism to allow you to have empathy for the bad things that your protagonist does.
Right.
And I like that because I like not necessarily morally gray people, like characters, but I like characters who are flawed, who are willing to do some of the worst things to keep others safe. I'm specifically writing a story right now. It may never see the light of day, but I'm specifically writing a story right now about someone who is willing to do the evil things for good reasons. And Mark, I think, justifies himself with doing evil things
Right.
for the right reasons.
Right.
And he has Khonshu in his ear the entire time telling him, you're doing the right thing. Here's another evildoer.
Right.
So now that we've gone off...
But I mean, this is a very complex. This
Right.
isn't your twisty mustache
Right.
villain. There's complex emotions and things going on, but just because you can justify doing a bad thing to yourself doesn't make the bad thing okay.
Okay, right, exactly.
But it makes us all feel good.
Right.
Like, we feel good that they did it, and they feel good that they did it, but it's still wrong.
By the definition of the society that we live in today, yes, it is wrong. Smacking somebody while you're defending your wife is correct, but not the way to handle it, if you understand what I'm saying. A couple of things I want to talk about with this episode before we skip out is Mark and Steven dealing with Harrow. And both of them going through the process of coming to terms with their own individual fears of Harrow and what he's trying to do and how he manipulates people, and the questioning of are they sane or not is a continuation of things that we've been getting from Harrow in the other episodes. It keeps him in the show, even though this episode is about Mark coming to terms with himself. It keeps Harrow, yes, the mustache twirling bad guy.
Maybe.
We'll get into theories and stuff in a minute, but him keeps him in the episode and keeps you questioning what is technically real and what is technically in his head.
Yes.
And that, just those little interactions between Mark and Steven and Harrow, makes me wonder about the show the rest of the way. We got one episode left.
Yeah. I mean, there was so much just sitting here thinking about it. There are so many things that happened that kind of got yada yada.
Yeah.
But they have to mean something.
Yeah.
He comes back and Mark's got a broken nose, and you're like, what happened there? And nothing. It just goes on. And then Terouette on the boat, the souls are coming down or whatever, and they're like, oh no, the souls. And then again, that just kind of gets yada yada off, and you're like, what is actually going on?
They talk her into turning the boat around to go to Osiris. Egyptian gods everywhere. Osiris, to get them back to the real world,
Right.
but also waking Khonshu. So they talk her. I'm gonna get to this point. They talk her into turning the boat around, but they still have to balance the scales.
Right.
But the yada yada of, oh, by the way, Harrow's just sending people to the underground is like,
it just happened.
It just happened.
And then went away, and and now you've got Steven gone.
That was the other thing I was going to bring up.
So there's just a lot that what was the rattling sarcophagus in the last episode?
So all of everything else I want to talk about in this episode is about that scene, because when they get to Osiris's gates, they're not in balance yet.
Right.
They're still not in balance, even though they've come to terms. Both Steven and Mark have come to terms with everything that's happened to them,
as far as they know.
Right. And I kept expecting Jake to be the one that shows up.
Right. And then they've got to add his heart.
They got to add his heart to balance the scales.
Right.
And that makes simple storytelling process. My silly little brain's like, that's the easy way out. That's the easy answer. Is that they've been teasing Mark for 3 episodes now. Jake, sorry. They've been teasing Jake for 3 episodes. Jake comes storming out. Terouette takes his heart out. Oh, look, the scales are balanced, whatever. No. They have to rip our hearts out by having Steven finally coming to terms with, if Mark knows it, I know it, that means I'm just as much of a badass.
Yeah.
And goes and saves Mark multiple times, and then gets sucked into the desert by the souls, and is now a soul in the desert.
Right.
And Mark is the one who gets to go to freaking heaven.
Right.
That's not right.
Yes, you're correct. And still, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last episode better be like an hour and 15 minutes.
It better be like 3 hours.
Right.
Because, again, is the first couple episodes the real world? Is him in the insane asylum the real world? Which is the real Harrow? Or is there a real Harrow? I mean, there's gotta be,
right.
Terouette was saying that Harrow is doing that with the souls, but then, and how?
Right.
And
so he has the Amulet statue. So my theory is that he's released her, become his her avatar, and is now doing what he's been talking about the entire time, which is judging people before they actually do anything.
Make the real world, the real world, the world for the first three episodes, the
Right.
real
Right.
world.
Except the camera crew and the green screen
Right.
things and the like there's been multiple episodes. It was pointed out by new rock stars, and then we started kind of like looking at other things. There's been obvious on purpose mistakes
Yeah.
of filming showing a camera crew or
Right.
showing a green screen that's still laying there or whatever,
Right.
because in the comic they one of the parts of the storyline is they have Jake, I believe it's Jake, running a TV show called Moon Knight.
Right.
And so if it's all a TV show and it's all made up, and Jake's the one who's been running the show from the sideline, like the show producer, then we have to question everything else that's
Right.
happened before now.
Right.
So what, like you're saying, what is real? Is it the TV crew's real? Is it the real world stuff, the first three episodes? Is it the asylum?
Right.
Is it the boat?
Right.
That Mark's actually been on the boat the entire time from when Conchu did not save him?
Right.
So there's like 5 or 6 different threads they're still laying out there, and we only have one episode left.
Right.
Now, there has been talks, rumors, innuendos, that this is only season 1.
Right.
The only shows that Marvel has officially re-upped for the second season is What If and Loki,
Right.
which means they have more stories that they want to tell within the confines of those shows. This one is much more of the idea of adding Moon Knight to the supernatural part of Marvel
Right.
with Blade and everything. We've been talking about with Ghost Rider and everything. So, but at season 2, you could do the whole Bushwhacker timeline thing
Yeah.
where he goes on a revenge tour to get back against the guy who
Right. That's another thing. Like, just this kind of guy gets dropped in and has done something pretty pivotal to the story, or
Right,
to
right.
Mark and Layla's story, that you never have seen.
and there's so much stuff there to fertilize with just that little scene of the archaeologist.
Yeah.
What else were they looking for? Because the Red Sparrow, what are the little beetles called?
Scarab.
Scarab. Red Scarab has been like the big rumor that's who Layla ends up turning into, because her name's very similar to the one in the comic. She had a red scarab on her wrapping and stuff like that. So you have that whole story arc too that's laying out there.
And
No end then.
oh, by the way, the 5th episode, the 6th episode next Wednesday, and Multiverse of Madness starts on Thursday.
Thursday. So
The very next day.
I have I could do a 3-hour long dissertation on what the Multiverse of Madness is going to do, but I'm with what they did with the turning the clock back, turning the sky back like they did the clocks, and people are just like, oh, it's the MCU, yada yada, and them eclipsing the moon. I think it could set up something where there's a bleed over effect that is hinted at the end of Moon Knight, and then like a week and a half later, it's like the end of WandaVision, where there's a really weird shadow coming into where Wanda is. It just feels like there's something there, but it's the MCU. They've edited characters out of the Thor trailer already, so
Right. They always edit characters
it's
out
Beta
of
Ray Bill, by
trailers.
the way.
Yeah, I find it interesting that they're having Moon Knight ending the day before Multiverse of Madness comes out.
Yeah. My theory has been and will always be, until I'm proven told differently next Thursday, that Multiverse of Madness is an Avengers level event inside the new Phase 4 of the MCU. That's what I'm going with, and that's going to affect everything else around it. including this show. So
Maybe.
that's where I'm going
Maybe.
with until now. I'm sure we missed some stuff. Please let us know in the comments down below. Also, be nice because we can't remember movie titles. Um,
There's a pandemic in between
there was all
that
kinds of
movie and
stuff
now.
that happened. So let us know what you thought of this episode and our reaction to it in the comments down below. Like I said, please be nice. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on all the social media stuff: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links are in the description down below. Until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night now.